My name's Jack Sliven. I was a long-haul trucker for 17 years. Drove all over the lower 48. I've slept in every corner of this country, from frostbitten Dakotas to swampy Mississippi, and seen things most people wouldn't believe. But the truth is, the strangest stories aren't the ones you hear on TV. They're the ones nobody talks about because no one would believe them. This story isn't about highway hypnosis or some spooky prank on CB radio. It's about something that changed me, something that still wakes me up sweating. And it all started with a stop for gas in the Mojave Desert. It was just past midnight, and I'd been pushing through a 600-mile stretch with barely a break. I was running a little late with a delivery out of New Mexico, hauling equipment for a pipeline contractor in Texas. The map showed one last fill-up spot before I hit a 120-mile dead zone. Middle of nowhere. The place didn't even have a name. Just a flickering neon sign that read, gas, it's cold beer. 3 pumps, a vending machine that probably hadn't been stocked since the 90s. And behind the bulletproof glass, a man named Earl. Earl looked like someone had built him out of desert dust and old tobacco. He wore a trucker hat that said Live Bait and had one of those yellowed grins you never quite trust. When I pulled in and killed the engine, he gave me a nod like he'd been expecting me. Pump 3's good. Fill her up, he rasped before I even said a word. I stepped out of the cab and stretched, my knees popping like bubble wrap. The desert night was colder than I'd expected for June. I started pumping, watching the numbers on the meter creep higher. When I stepped back inside to pay, I slid my credit card under the scratched up glass. Earl didn't even try to swipe it. He just looked at it, then looked at me. Machine's busted, he said. Cash only. My stomach dropped. I almost never carry cash. Too many shady stops and too many places that like to shortchange you. But by some miracle, I had about $60 in 20s stuffed in the side pocket of my wallet. I slid them under. As Earl counted them, I heard the ding of the door opening behind me. I turned. It was a woman, blonde, young, maybe mid-20s. She wore a thin jacket, nothing suited for the desert cold, and carried nothing with her. No bag, no phone. Her face was blank, too blank. Not afraid, not angry, just still. Truck breakdown, I asked, trying not to let my voice shake. She looked at me, head tilted slightly like a confused dog. Then, slowly, she nodded. I looked past her, out into the dark lot, expecting to see a vehicle, a stranded sedan or a dusted up SUV, but the lot was empty, except it wasn't. At the far edge of the light, just beyond the flicker of the gas station's old bulbs, I saw movement. Not the kind that you brush off as windblown bushes or a trick of your eyes. No, these were silhouettes, human-shaped, 3, maybe 4 of them, keeping low behind an abandoned car, watching, waiting. Every part of me screamed to run, to leave, but I still asked her, "Do you need help?" Her lips parted slightly. I leaned closer. Then she whispered, "Don't stop." That was it. No thanks, no explanation. Just, don't stop. I didn't. I turned on my heel, grabbed my receipt from Earl, who, weirdly, hadn't even looked up during the entire exchange, and walked back to my Freightliner as calmly as I could. As soon as the door slammed shut, I fired up the engine. My hands were shaking so hard they barely held the wheel. I pulled out of the lot, and the last thing I saw in the side mirror was the girl still standing there, facing the shadows, unmoving, like she'd done this before. Back on the highway, adrenaline burned through my veins like jet fuel. The cab felt too quiet, too exposed. I kept checking the rearview mirror for headlights. There were none, only the desert, only the road. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd probably just stumbled into some weird local drama. A stolen car, a bad deal, a woman running from something. Maybe Earl was used to it. Maybe that's why he never blinked. But part of me knew better. You don't just see figures lurking in the dark in the middle of nowhere for no reason. And you sure as hell don't get told. Don't stop by someone who looks straight through you. I didn't sleep that night. I drove through until sunrise. Stomach in knots, head buzzing with questions I couldn't shake. And that was only the beginning. By the time the sun cracked the horizon, I'd crossed into Colorado and my eyes felt like they'd been scrubbed with sandpaper. I hadn't stopped once, not even to piss. That's not like me. But after the gas station incident, I couldn't risk slowing down not until daylight came. The desert heat had faded into an icy wind as I gained elevation. Patches of snow still clung to the shoulders of the road. That's when the radio cut out. First the static, then silence. CB, FM, satellite. Everything went dead. I tapped the dash, like that ever helps, and muttered, "Don't you start on me too." My stomach was chewing itself apart. I hadn't eaten since noon the day before. But I wasn't about to stop at any more roadside diners, especially not the kind with ghosts in the parking lot. I figured I'd make it to Cutbank, grab breakfast, and catch a few hours of shut-eye at a rest stop. But my fate had a different plan. About 30 miles outside of town, I saw something that didn't belong on the road. A man, alone. He was walking west, jacket pulled tight, head bowed into the wind. No car in sight, no bag, no dog, nothing. Just him in the snow, and a thumb sticking out like it was 1963. I slowed. It's an unspoken rule out here, truckers help truckers. And even if you're not in the business, if you're stranded in the middle of nowhere, we pull over. It's just how it's done. He looked up as I approached. I noticed something strange even before I came to a stop. His face was calm. Not relieved, not desperate, just calm, like he already knew I was going to stop. I leaned over and opened the passenger side door. Cold air blasted in. "You alright?" I asked. "You need a lift?" "Yes, thank you," he said, as smooth as if he'd just stepped out of an office meeting instead of a blizzard. "I've been walking for a few hours. My vehicle broke down about 15 miles back." He climbed in without hesitation. Didn't even stomp the snow off his boots. "My name's Robert," he said, extending a gloved hand. His skin was warm, too warm. We drove in silence for a few minutes. I glanced at him every so often, something gnawing at me. He was bone dry. No snow on his coat, no fog on his glasses, not even the faintest hint of frostbite on his cheeks. His beard was neatly trimmed, not a drop of moisture clinging to it. "You said your vehicle broke down?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yes, battery gave out. It happens out here, especially this time of year." I nodded slowly. "You must have been freezing." Robert smiled. "You get used to it." Then he added, "Besides, I wasn't really alone. That stopped me cold." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "You weren't?" He looked at me, eyes glittering behind square-frame glasses. "No, I study things like this. The old myths. The things that live in the snow." I forced a chuckle. "Folklore. Some call it that," he said. "Others call it truth." He told me about the Blackfeet people. Said their stories spoke of creatures in the storm, not spirits, not animals, beings, things that weren't meant to walk in this world. They didn't howl or chase. They waited. "They don't lure you in," Robert said softly. "They let you choose. The minute you stop moving, that's when they take you." I felt the back of my neck prickling. "And what exactly do they take you for?" He didn't answer right away, just looked out the window and whispered, "They make you part of the cold." That was enough for me. When we reached Cutbank, I pulled into the first gas station and parked under the lights. Robert turned to me with that same placid expression. "Thank you, Jack." I never told him my name. I froze. "How did you—" He opened the door and stepped out before I could finish. Then, without another word, he walked away. No wave, no glance back. I watched him disappear into the snow. A part of me wanted to chase him down, demand answers, ask who the hell he really was. But then I noticed something on the passenger seat, a smudge. It looked like frost at first, but when I ran my fingers over it, it felt dry, like ash. I didn't sleep in Cutbank. I drove straight to a diner that looked just alive enough not to be haunted. The kind of place with handwritten signs taped to the soda fountain and old locals gossiping about grain prices. I sat in a corner booth and ordered bacon, eggs, and black coffee. The waitress smiled, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're not from around here," she said as she refilled my mug. "No, ma'am, just passing through." She nodded. "That's what they all say." I thought it was just small talk until I saw the bulletin board near the register. Photos, dozens of them. Truckers, all smiling. all dated. I got up to take a closer look. There, tucked between two Polaroids, was a note scribbled in red ink. "Thank you for visiting the last stop. See you next time." My knees almost buckled. I hadn't told anyone where I was headed, not even dispatch, and I sure as hell hadn't given this place a name. The waitress was watching me now. Something wrong. Oh no. I forced a smile. No, I just forgot something in my truck. I left enough cash on the table to cover breakfast and walked out without another word. I didn't look back. I didn't even know I was shaking until I pulled onto the highway again. The words on that note, "See you next time," kept flashing in my mind like a dying neon sign. It was the kind of message that sounded casual until you realized it was written in red Sharpie and posted between the photos of men who never came back. Something was watching me, keeping track. I told myself I'd take the long way west, avoid any back roads, and get to Seattle in one straight shot. Deliver the damn oil rig gear, get paid, and finally take a break. No more diners, no more hitchhikers, and absolutely no more stops in towns that didn't show up on a map. But just after 9 p.m., somewhere along Route 87 in northern Montana, something changed. At first, it was the blinking lights, hazard lights. Up ahead, cutting through the fog like red warning eyes, a semi-truck pulled over to the shoulder. No flares, no driver in sight. Now, you gotta understand there's an unwritten law among truckers. You help your own, whether it's a blown tire, frozen radiator, or just someone falling asleep at the wheel, we stop. I slowed down automatically, but as I approached, I got a strange feeling in my gut. That quiet, twisted kind of dread, the kind that doesn't scream danger but wrong. The other truck was completely still, lights flashing, trailer crooked slightly into the lane. But what struck me first was how familiar it looked. Same body, same color, same company logo, same exact model as mine. I passed it slowly, eyes scanning for movement. There was none. No cab light, no reflective vest, no footsteps in the snow, just silence. I rolled another half-mile down the road before I pulled over. Heart pounding, I grabbed my flashlight, took a deep breath, and stepped out. That was mistake number one. I walked back up the road, boots crunching in the thin frost. But when I reached the spot, there was nothing there. The shoulder was empty, no truck, no tire marks, no lights fading in the distance, just frozen asphalt and the sound of my own breath fogging up the air. I stood there, trying to make sense of it, when I heard something behind me. A click, not loud, not threatening, but sharp and deliberate like a CB mic keying on. I turned around. No one was there. I jogged back to my truck, locked the doors, and hit the gas harder than I should have. I watched the mirror for a solid 10 minutes, half expecting something to come charging out of the fog, but nothing did. I finally let out a long, ragged breath. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the lack of sleep, the endless miles, the weird diner. Robert, all of it was finally catching up. But then, around 10:40, I saw it again. Hazard lights, same make, same model, same crooked angle in the road. And again, no driver in sight. I swerved around it this time, barely slowing. I didn't care who it was or what they wanted. I wasn't getting out. Not again. That's when I realized something that chilled me deeper than the snowstorm outside. It wasn't another truck. It was the same truck. Same missing license plate. Same bent side mirror. Same dent on the passenger side door. I know, because those are the same imperfections I have on my truck. I looked up at the windshield as I passed and saw the silhouette of someone sitting in the driver's seat. Head low, hands on the wheel. Except it wasn't someone. Not really. Its head turned slowly toward me as I passed, and it had no face, just a blank, smooth surface, like the skin of a balloon stretched too tight. No eyes, no mouth, just nothing. I swerved and nearly hit a ditch. By the time I looked back, the truck was gone again. I didn't sleep that night either. I drove nonstop until I hit the next rest stop outside Great Falls. I parked in the farthest lot, killed the engine, and stared at the dashboard for a solid hour. That thing, whatever it was, had shown itself in my mirror. It wore my truck like a costume, and it saw me. I thought I had imagined the face, or lack of one, until I did a quick search online. Just curiosity. You know, ghost stories, phantom trucks. But I found something, dozens of stories, posted years apart by different people. Stories of a blank-faced figure riding in trucks that shouldn't exist. Of a semi that appears behind you, matches your speed, and then vanishes. Most of these reports came from fuel haulers like me. That's when my skin went cold again. These things, whatever they were, weren't just haunting highways. They were hunting people like me. The next day, I decided to take a shortcut west, an old service road that would cut a couple of hours off my route. My dispatcher wouldn't care, so long as the load arrived on time. It was a mistake. A big one, because that road led me straight to Tunnel Creek, a place I hadn't heard of until that day. A place I will never, ever forget. I should have known better. The minute I turned off onto the access road for Tunnel Creek, the GPS went blank. Just a red triangle floating on an empty grid, spinning in place. The voice guidance stopped. The map disappeared. Still, I kept going. My rig rumbled over the cracked pavement as the forest closed in on both sides like a set of rotten jaws. I told myself it was just a back road, a shortcut, nothing more. But the farther I drove, the less the world made sense. The trees weren't right. They were too tall, too still. Not a single leaf moved, though I could see my breath clouding up in the cold. And the sky. Jesus, the sky looked wrong, like the color of an old bruise. That's when I saw the tunnel. It was carved straight into the base of a mountain. No signage, no warning lights, just a faded wooden board above the archway with hand-painted letters. Tunnel Creek, Est, 1937. The mouth was wide enough for a semi, just barely. A rusted height clearance sign hung crooked over the entrance. Frento. My rig was 13 even, tight fit. I hit the brakes and considered turning back, but the road was too narrow to reverse. Trees hugged both sides, and the last turnoff had been miles back. I cursed, adjusted my mirrors, and eased forward. As soon as I entered the tunnel, my headlights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed, like the darkness inside was drinking the light. I was halfway through when I noticed the pavement had changed. At first I thought I was imagining it, but the vibrations in the cab told the truth. The smooth rumble of asphalt had shifted into a gritty, uneven drag. I glanced out the window. It wasn't pavement anymore. It was dirt. The concrete had given way to a soft, loose surface. My tires left deep impressions as I rolled forward. The walls of the tunnel weren't concrete either. They were jagged rock, wet with moss. No signs of blasting or rebar. Just a natural cavern, somehow shaped into a road. I slowed to a crawl. Then the radio crackled. Not the CB, not the FM, just raw static, bursting from the speakers even though I'd shut everything off. And in the middle of it, a whisper, a woman's voice. "Stay with us." I slammed the brakes. The tunnel fell dead silent again. I stared ahead, hands clenched on the wheel, heart thudding. Then I saw them, faces, dozens of them, floating just outside the tunnel walls like fish trapped behind glass. Men, women, children, all with hollow eyes and mouths frozen in silent screams. They moved in slow circles, drifting through the rock like they were suspended in water. Some of them turned toward me. One reached out, and I swear to God, I heard it speak without sound. "Jack." Panic clawed up my throat. I had slammed the gear shift into drive and floored it. The truck roared forward, fishtailing slightly on the dirt road. I didn't care. I just needed out. As I sped ahead, the tunnel began to change. The walls narrowed. The roof seemed to lower. I could hear the crunch of stone scraping my trailer. My headlights flickered again. Once, twice, then darkness. I drove blind for 3 full seconds. It felt like falling. Then the light snapped back on. But it wasn't the same tunnel anymore. Now it was smooth again. The walls were dry. The pavement was back. And ahead of me, daylight. I burst out of the tunnel like a bullet. The rig skidded slightly as it hit open air. The sky had cleared. Birds chirped in the trees. It was like I'd crossed into a different world. I pulled over immediately and jumped out of the cab, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. The back of my trailer was scratched to hell. Deep gouges ran down the aluminum walls, marks that hadn't been there before. And the worst part, carved into the rear door, like it had been etched with claws, were 3 words. You came closer. I didn't finish the shortcut. I turned back toward the main highway. Even though it added 3 hours to the trip, I didn't care. Something lived in that tunnel, something that didn't want me to leave. And for a few minutes, I'd nearly stayed. That night, I checked into a roadside motel in Idaho. Small, quiet, just far enough from the tunnel to make me feel safe. The clerk gave me room 7. Keycard didn't work at first. I should have taken that as a sign. By midnight, I was asleep. By 2 a.m., I was wide awake. Something was tapping on the window. There are certain sounds you never want to hear at 2 a.m. in a motel. A child crying in the hallway. A knock with no shadow under the door. Or in my case, tapping on the window. It started soft, like the ticking of fingernails on glass. I bolted upright in bed, heart slamming in my chest. The motel room was dim, just the yellow glow of a single bedside lamp and the humming of the old air unit below the window. Tap, 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 pause, tap. I stared at the curtain. Something was behind it. My rig was parked right outside. No trees, no bushes. The window faced a gravel lot lit by a single flickering security light. I told myself it was probably a moth or wind hitting a loose pane, but I knew better. The taps were rhythmic, deliberate, like fingers keeping time. I slid off the bed slowly and reached for the pocket knife I kept under my pillow. It wasn't much, but it made me feel less helpless. I crept to the window, holding my breath. The air felt thicker, like the room itself was listening. I yanked the curtain aside. Nothing. The gravel lot was empty. The security light buzzed lazily overhead. My Freightliner sat in silence, dark and still. But there on the glass was a smudge. A perfect handprint. 5 long fingers. No palm lines. Too big to be a child's. Too narrow to be a man's. The kind of hand that didn't belong to anything human. I backed away fast, nearly tripping over my duffel. My phone was dead. Not low battery, just dead. Wouldn't turn on, even plugged in. The motel landline, dead too. No dial tone, no clicks, just silence. That's when I noticed something else. The room was wrong. The wall clock above the TV ticked backwards. The Bible in the drawer wasn't in English, and above the bed, where most motels hang some cheap landscape print or Bible verse, was a photo of a tunnel. That tunnel. Tunnel Creek. Only this time, the tunnel was darker. Its entrance smeared black, as if something was crawling out of it. And in the lower corner of the frame, faint but unmistakable, was my own license plate. I turned and grabbed my keys. I didn't care if I had to sleep in the cab. I wasn't spending another second in that room. But when I opened the door, the hallway wasn't there. It was the tunnel. Dirt walls, flickering lights, the sound of distant whispers. I had slammed the door shut so hard, the lamp on the nightstand toppled and shattered. I was trapped. I started pacing, heart jackhammering, breath coming in sharp gasps. There had to be a way out, a crack, a back door, a vent, anything. Then, the TV turned on by itself. No static, no channels, just a black screen with one message. We've been waiting, Jack. My blood turned to ice. That's when the knock came. Not from the window this time, from the closet. 3 knocks, soft but heavy, like knuckles wrapped in cloth. I stepped closer, knife trembling in my grip. The closet door was cracked just an inch, a sliver of black between the frame and the wood. "Who's there?" I whispered, instantly regretting it. The door creaked open wider. A voice answered. "You already know." It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, but it sounded like a dozen voices layered on top of each other, male, female, old, young, all speaking in unison. I lunged forward and slammed the door shut, wedging a chair against the knob. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the knife. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. I just sat in the corner and waited for sunrise. When dawn finally crept over the horizon, something changed. The room brightened. The noises stopped. The air returned to normal, cold and stale, like any motel should be. I opened the door. This time, it was a regular hallway. Carpeted, faint smell of coffee and chlorine. I left the key on the nightstand and didn't say a word at checkout. The desk clerk didn't even look up from her crossword. Outside, The smudge on my truck's window was gone. No handprint, no message, just a layer of frost melting in the morning sun. But the photo I'd seen in the room, the one with Tunnel Creek in my license plate, it was real. Because tucked under my windshield wiper, folded in half, was a Polaroid. Tunnel entrance. Same frame, same grain, and in the lower right-hand corner, scribbled in red ink, "Next time, stop driving." I drove away from that motel and didn't stop for 6 hours. Not for gas, not for food, not even to piss. Somehow I made it through the rest of the haul. Delivered the gear, got the signature, the whole nine. But that night, as I tried to sleep in the truck stop lot outside Seattle, I noticed something strange on my phone now working again. A missed call. No number, no voicemail, just one word. Written in the notification preview. Soon. I should have ignored the message. Soon. Just one word. No number. No alert sound. It vanished before I could even screenshot it. I told myself it was a glitch. Some junk notification from an app I didn't remember downloading. But that would have made sense. And after Tunnel Creek, I'd stopped expecting sense from anything. The rig needed fuel, and I needed sleep. So I pushed on toward the Idaho-Washington border. I kept to the highways, avoided all shortcuts, ignored the GPS when it tried to optimize my route. I was determined to get back to familiar roads. But that's not how this works. That's not how they work. Around 8 p.m., I saw the sign. Pine Lake Rest Area 2 miles. Just the kind of place I needed a legitimate state run stop. With clean bathrooms, picnic benches, and a separate parking loop for big rigs. Or at least, that's what I thought. The moment I pulled in, something felt wrong. There were no other trucks. That never happens, no matter the time of day. You'll always find a few rigs, cooling their engines or drivers sleeping in the cab. But the lot was empty, completely still. I parked under one of the tall yellow floodlights and shut off the engine. Silence. No insects. No wind. No hum. From the lights overhead. Just stillness, like the entire place was holding its breath. The building itself was one of those old wooden lodges, stone columns, moss-covered shingles, and a front door that looked like it belonged in a summer camp horror flick. But I went in anyway. The interior was cleaner than I expected. Too clean. Not a speck of dust. Everything arranged like it had been staged. Even the vending machines were fully stocked, but the lights inside didn't flicker. They glowed like a museum display. I stepped into the men's restroom, splashed water on my face, and stared into the mirror. That's when I saw the back wall. It was covered in writing, thousands of names, scratched into the tile. Some neat and small, others huge and frenzied, all in different hands, all in different depths. As if each person had used whatever tool they had on them to carve their name. But one thing was the same for all of them. Each name had a date next to it, and each date was followed by the words, "Stayed at Pine Lake." I backed out fast and nearly collided with an older man standing in the doorway. He wore a faded green uniform, some kind of park ranger getup, but there was no name tag, no patch, just a uniform and a wide smile that didn't match his eyes. "Evening," he said. "Hey," I muttered, stepping around him. "Didn't see you come in." He chuckled. "Most folks don't. You passing through, or staying the night?" Just stretching my legs. "Best not to stay long," he said, eyes following me as I moved. "They like it when people linger." "Who's they?" He smiled wider. "You'll find out if you stay." That was it. I was done. I turned and pushed through the front doors, practically running back to my truck. But something had changed. There were now cars in the lot. Old ones, new ones, pickups, sedans, but none of them had drivers. No movement, no headlights. Just parked there facing my truck. I sprinted the last few steps and jumped into the cab, locking the doors behind me. I sat there, frozen. Then came the knock. Not on my door, on the passenger side window. I turned slowly, heart hammering. It was the ranger, only it wasn't. His face had melted into something waxy and wrong, like it had been stretched too thin over a skull that wasn't human. His eyes were black and shining like buttons, and his mouth, it just kept smiling. I reached for the ignition. The keys wouldn't turn. I yanked at them, shouting, cursing. Then the radio turned on. Static. Then a voice. Jack, you've already checked in. The floodlights above the lot snapped off. Total darkness. I couldn't see the ranger anymore. I couldn't see anything. Just pitch black silence pressing in on all sides. Then tapping. Dozens of taps. All around the cab. Roof. Windows. Doors. Tapping like fingernails on glass. Like someone or something was crawling all over my rig. I screamed and kicked the dash. Start. Damn you. The engine roared to life. I floored it. The headlights flared and I blasted out of the rest area. Tires screaming against gravel. Trailer swinging wide as I pulled onto the highway and didn't let up for 15 miles. When I finally slowed down, hands shaking, I looked at the dashboard. No warning lights. No engine codes. Nothing wrong. Except for one thing. The digital clock had reset. Nudge. Nobile. And the fuel gauge, which had been 3/4 full before I stopped, was now sitting just above E. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I just drove. And in the morning, when I stopped at a gas station in Spokane, I checked my phone. No notifications. No missed calls. But under recent locations, one line had appeared. Pine Lake checked in 11:56 p.m. By the time I crossed into central Washington, I hadn't slept in over 30 hours. The lines in the road started to blur together. My head was heavy, shoulders burning every couple miles. I swore I saw movement on the shoulder like a figure stepping just out of view. Over and over, I needed to stop, not because I wanted to, because I had to. That's when I saw the diner. No lights, no billboards, just a beat up sign by the highway with flaking red paint that read, "The last stop home cooked meals." Since 1974, I'd never heard of it. Never seen it on the route before, but it looked safe. There were a few trucks parked outside, which was a good sign. The lot was gravel, soft and quiet under my wheels as I pulled in and shut off the engine. I pocketed my keys and stepped out, trying not to think about Pine Lake or the tunnel or the handprint. I told myself I just needed a hot meal, some caffeine, and maybe a few hours of shut-eye in the cab. That was mistake number 4. The diner was classic roadside Americana chrome trim, red vinyl booths, checkered floors. A bell jingled softly as I pushed open the door. It was warm inside, too warm, like the kind of warmth you don't get from heating vents, the kind that sinks into your bones, soft and slow, like a fever coming on. A woman behind the counter looked up and smiled. "Take any seat, Horn," she said, pouring coffee that steamed far more than it should have. I nodded and slid into a booth near the window. There were people scattered throughout the place, mostly men. Truckers from the look of them, flannel shirts, trucker hats, thick boots. They all looked tired, not sleepy tired, soul tired. One man in the far corner was just staring into a mug that had long gone cold. Another tapped the table rhythmically with a spoon. The guy behind me whispered to himself. I was about to stand up and walk out when the waitress returned with a mug of coffee and a menu. "You've been here before?" she asked with that same static smile. "No, first time." She blinked slowly. Could have sworn I saw your name on the board." I furrowed my brow. "What board?" She didn't answer, just walked away. I looked down at the coffee. Something about it smelled off, like soil. I pushed it aside and picked up the menu. There were only 3 items. Breakfast plate, diner special, truck stop chili. No prices, no drinks, no sides. Before I could say anything, a man in a faded denim jacket sat across from me. He hadn't asked. He didn't smile. He just sat, hands folded neatly. "Jack Sliven," he said. I froze. "How do you know my name?" He didn't blink. "You've been on the road a long time." I stared at him. His eyes were pale blue, almost translucent. His skin was stretched too tight over his cheekbones. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I don't know who you are, but I'm just here to eat and get some rest. That's all." "You checked in," he said softly. "What?" "Pine Lake, Tunnel Creek, the girl at the gas station, the handprint. You stopped when you should have driven. You drove when you should have stayed. You broke the rules, Jack." I stood up so fast the table rattled. The entire diner went silent. Every head turned toward me. Every eye was blank. No iris, no pupil, just milky white. I backed toward the door. Thanks for the hospitality, I said, barely masking the terror in my voice. But I've got a load to deliver. The denim man tilted his head. You already delivered it? I froze. What? You made the drop in Seattle 2 days ago. You've just been driving in circles ever since. That couldn't be right. Could it? I reached into my jacket and pulled out my delivery confirmation slip. It was there, dated 2 days prior. I hadn't remembered sleeping, or refueling, or the miles I'd supposedly driven. I just remembered being chased. I turned and bolted for the door. The bell jingled. Outside, my truck was gone. I blinked, heart slamming in my chest. No freight liner, no trailer, no tire marks, just the diner, sitting in the middle of a gravel lot surrounded by dense pine trees. I turned in a slow circle. The road I had come in on was gone. The sign, the turnoff, everything. Behind me, the bell jingled again. The waitress stepped out. You forgot your receipt, she said, holding out a piece of paper. I took it without thinking. It wasn't a receipt. It was a list, a long list of names, dozens of them. Some scratched out, some repeated, all dated. At the bottom, in trembling handwriting, thank you for visiting the last stop. See you next time. The air grew heavy. The sky above the trees darkened too quickly, like a time lapse in reverse. Shadows grew teeth. The pine needles shivered with whispers. I backed away, clenching the list, and ran into the woods. Anywhere but here. I didn't know where the road was. I didn't care. I just knew one thing. If I stayed, I'd never leave. I don't know how long I ran. The pines grew thicker the deeper I went, like fingers tightening around me. The gravel lot and the diner disappeared behind the trees, swallowed by the dark. But I didn't stop, not until I saw the lights. Faint, fuzzy, like someone had left an old CRT TV on in the woods. I should have turned around. Any sane person would have, but I wasn't thinking anymore. I was running on instinct and fear, so I pushed through the last of the trees and found myself standing at the edge of a truck stop. It looked abandoned. The parking lot was cracked and overtaken by weeds. The gas pumps were rusted, leaning sideways like they were sinking into the earth. The main building, a squat brown structure with weathered siding, still had an old sign above the door that read, K&J Service Plaza open 24 hours. I'd been here before, years ago, back when I was hauling produce out of Yakima. I remember this place because the bathrooms were clean and they had an old jukebox that still worked, a little oasis in the middle of rural Washington. But they shut it down 7 years ago. I remembered hearing about the fire, how faulty wiring burned the place down. No injuries, but total loss. It was in all the trucker circles. Some said the land was cursed. Others said the owner just walked off into the woods one day and never came back. Yet here it was perfectly intact. The sign above the main building glowed faint blue. Open! I walked toward the glass doors. They opened on their own with its soft ding electricity humming through wires that shouldn't have worked. Inside was exactly as I remembered. 4 mica floors, coffee counter to the left, a hallway to the bathroom straight ahead, and the jukebox in the corner still playing, barely audible. The song, Blue Moon. Something twisted in my gut. I hadn't heard that song since Ayn left. That was our song. I turned toward the coffee machine. It was running, full pot, no one in sight. I poured a cup without thinking. The second I took a sip, I gagged and spit it out. It tasted like ash. Jack. My blood turned cold. The voice was soft, familiar, impossible. I turned slowly. Standing in the hallway near the restrooms was Ayn, my ex-wife. Same brown curls, same blue flannel she used to steal from my side of the closet. Same tired eyes. Aini, I whispered. She smiled. You came back. No, this isn't right. You live in Boise. We haven't spoken in. She stepped forward. Her bare feet made no sound on the tile. You always said you'd come back to this place if things got bad. You said it felt safe here. That was before it burned down. It didn't burn, she said. It changed. I backed away. You're not real. She stopped. And just for a moment, her smile dropped. Her voice changed, deepened, layered. The same way Robert's had in the cab. The same way the voice in the tunnel had sounded. You remember us. That's all that matters. I turned and bolted for the exit, but the doors were gone. Where there had once been glass and neon, there was now just wall. Seamless, windowless, brown wood paneling stretching end to end. I spun around. The interior had changed too. The coffee counter was gone. The tables, the jukebox, the ceiling tiles sagged under a red light I hadn't noticed before, and the hallway to the bathrooms. Now a dark corridor, stretching far longer than the building should have allowed. From that hallway came the sound of boots, dozens of them, heavy and slow. They were coming. I pressed myself against the wall, heart punching my ribs. "Jack," a voice crooned from the hallway. "We have something for you. You left it behind. You left us behind." Then laughter, familiar, distorted. It was my own voice, overlapping with others. I ran toward the kitchen door in the back, the kind that employees used. It creaked as I forced it open and stumbled into a loading bay. Outside again. I nearly sobbed with relief, except the lot wasn't empty anymore. Rows of trucks filled the space, all idling, all driverless. Their lights blinked in unison, like eyes fluttering open, and in front of each truck stood a figure, some tall, some hunched, all unmoving, all wrong, one by one. They looked at me, or maybe through me, and I realized something I hadn't admitted until now. They'd been watching me for a long time, waiting. I didn't go for my truck. I sprinted for the woods. Branches whipped my face. Thorns tore at my arms. Somewhere behind me, the low grumble of engines followed deeper than diesel. Something older. They didn't chase me. They just watched and waited and whispered. I finally collapsed near a dry creek bed, face buried in moss, chest heaving. Above me, the stars blinked through the pines. They were still there, far away, silent, normal. They reminded me the world hadn't completely ended, that maybe I still had a chance to escape this. I looked down at my hands. They were dirty, bleeding, and clutching a crumpled paper I didn't remember picking up. I smoothed it out. At the top, it said, "Official Delivery Manifest, the last stop freight and logistics." And next to the box marked "Cargo," written in all caps. 1-1 human soul status. In transit. I woke up in my truck. Not on the forest floor. Not in some nightmare diner. In the cab of my Freightliner. Parked neatly at a way station just off Highway 12. Engine off. Seatbelt on. Radio tuned to static. And my hands were clean. No blood. No mud. No manifest. Just a gentle breeze drifting through the cracked window and a line of semis idling ahead of me. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all, that my mind had finally cracked under the stress and long hauls. But then I glanced at the GPS. Last sync, 3 days ago, and the odometer, 600 miles unaccounted for. I pulled forward automatically when the rig in front of me inched ahead. The way station sat beneath a long tin canopy, the kind with high walls and flickering yellow lights. A bored-looking officer in a tan uniform waved me toward the scale pad. I rolled the truck onto the metal grate, but the screen didn't show a weight. It just flashed. Scanning. "Please remain still. Processing." The officer stepped out of the booth and walked toward my cab. He was older, maybe mid-60s, with sun-wrinkled skin and silver hair slicked too perfectly under his cap. His name tag read, Weller. He motioned for me to roll down the window. "You Jack Slavin." I froze. "Yeah. We've been expecting you." My gut tightened. "I didn't schedule an inspection," I said, voice low, trying to hide the rising panic. Weller didn't respond, just held out a clipboard. On it was a form that made no sense. Manifest type, non-classified cargo, driver status, pending return, dates of departure, indeterminate, weight, nay, destination, the last stop. "This a joke?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small envelope yellowed, sealed with red wax. The wax bore no symbol, just a fingerprint pressed into it. He handed it to me and stepped back. "You're cleared to proceed," he said, but Weller turned and walked away without another word. I looked down at the envelope. My name was written on the front in black ink. Nothing else. I should have thrown it out, should have crumpled it up, stomped it underfoot, and peeled out onto the highway like my life depended on it. But instead, I opened it Inside was a single sheet of paper, no signature, no heading, just 5 words. Printed in uneven type, do not enter mile marker 47. That's it. No explanation, no warning tone, just a command. I emerged back onto the highway in silence. Every part of me itched. My scalp, my arms, the space behind my eyes. I kept glancing at the mirrors, half expecting to see someone or something sitting in the sleeper. Nothing. But every time I looked down at the envelope again, I saw that message burned into my vision like it had been backlit. Mile marker 47, 30 miles later. The sun began to set. The golden light flared across the dash and cast long, reaching shadows across the road. I passed a series of billboards for trucker bars and fuel discounts. Then I saw the sign, mile marker 46. I tensed. The steering wheel felt heavier in my hands. My pulse throbbed behind my eyes. The GPS was still dead, the radio still static, and I was still driving toward a point in space someone or something desperately didn't want me to reach. I thought about turning around, but as I slowed down, I saw flashing lights in the rear view. A police cruiser, unmarked, black, silent. It didn't pull me over, just stayed behind me, pushing me forward. Mile marker 47. I passed it. The second my tires rolled past the sign, I heard a sound I hadn't heard in hours. A woman's voice. You shouldn't have come. It didn't come from the radio, or the phone, or the speakers. It came from everywhere. Suddenly, the road changed. The asphalt under me buckled. Shifted, the white lines began to swirl, like paint dragged through water. My headlights flickered, and the trees on either side of the road moved. Not from wind, from choice. They leaned forward, their trunks bending toward the highway like curious observers. And between them, in the spaces where underbrush should have been, were faces. Some I recognized. Robert, the ranger from Pine Lake, the waitress at the last stop, even Annie. They didn't speak. They didn't blink. They just watched. Then came the horn, low, rumbling, distant, coming closer. I glanced into the mirror, and there it was, the faceless truck, the one that mirrored mine. Every dent, every sticker, every scratch, only the cab was darker now, rotting, warped, and behind the wheel, in the exact posture I always sat, was a thing. Thin, too tall, long arms resting on the wheel, no face, just skin stretched tight over a shape not meant for human eyes. It flashed its brights once, then began to accelerate. I floored it. The rig screamed, the trailer groaning under the weight as I pushed it past 70. Ochifam enemy. But the road wouldn't end. Mile 48 never came. No signs, no exits. Just mile 47 on repeat again and again, like a vinyl skipping. The truck behind me never honked, never swerved. It didn't need to. It was gaining, and in its headlights, I saw something impossible. My own silhouette, behind my wheel, chasing me. I reached down and tore the envelope in half. The paper inside burned like dry leaves, flaking into ash without fire. Instantly, the headlights behind me vanished. The road straightened. The trees fell still, and up ahead, blinking and real and solid, mile marker 49. I slowed the truck and pulled to the shoulder, breathing in short, sharp bursts. Behind me, no lights, no face, no truck. I looked at my hands again, still mine, but shaking, and there, on the seat beside me, were the scraps of the message curling, blackened, and gone, except for one piece, the bottom corner, where someone had scrawled, "There's no exit, only delay." After mile marker 47, I drove like a ghost. Didn't talk, didn't think, barely blinked. I just kept moving. No music, no radio, just the hum of the tires and the ticking of my dash clock. It had reset again, now frozen at 0:47, blinking steadily like a slow heartbeat. The highway had thinned out. The towns were farther apart. Every rest stop I passed looked wrong, like a painting of a place instead of the place itself. But eventually, I saw signs of life. A chain truck stop Big Moose Station advertised 24-hour fuel, food, and showers. It was brightly lit, with a glowing moot on the roof and 3 rigs already parked in the trucker lot. It looked real, so I stopped. Inside, The lights buzzed like normal. The tile floor had the familiar layer of grime. The coffee smelled burnt in the right way. I grabbed a seat at the far end of the counter, next to a window where I could keep an eye on my rig. A few minutes passed before someone slid into the seat next to me. Didn't say a word at first. Then he cleared his throat and muttered, "You've seen it too, haven't you?" I looked up. He was maybe 50, balding, a few days of scruff on his chin. T-shirt stretched across a beer belly. No name tag, no patch, just tired eyes. "Seen what?" I asked. He smiled without humor. "The weight that isn't on the scale, the route that loops when it shouldn't, the faces that ain't faces at all." My blood ran cold. "I used to be in transit too," he added, holding out a hand. "Name's Carl." We talked over black coffee in silence. Carl said he was a driver for 22 years, before his last route went off the map. Literally. He had a paper logbook filled with destinations no dispatcher could confirm. He said he delivered unknown cargo to places that didn't appear on any GPS, places called the Border, the Hollow, and Station Red. Each time, he'd wake up somewhere else. No memory of the drive. Just fragments, symbols, a woman whispering through the CB. I muttered without meaning to. Carl's eyes flicked toward me. "She has different names, but the face, that never changes." I didn't ask how he knew mine. I didn't have to. "You're marked now," he said, sliding his cup away. "You broke containment." "I didn't break anything," I snapped. "You stopped. You turned around. You got curious. Same as me." I opened my mouth to argue, but he kept talking. "They don't take everyone, just the ones who veer too close. The ones who see what they weren't supposed to. The stretch of road that repeats. The rest stop that shouldn't exist. The mirror that doesn't reflect you quite right." He leaned in. "The thing is, Jack, you're not delivering a load anymore." I stared at him. "Then what the hell am I doing?" He smiled, not unkindly. "You're the cargo." I sat back in my stool, stomach twisted in a knot. "You're saying I'm not driving anymore?" "Oh, you're driving," he said. "You're just not the one picking the destination." I looked outside. My truck was still there, parked exactly where I left it. Same scratches, same mud-splashed tires, same dent in the rear trailer door. But I swear to God, for just 1 second I saw the cab light flick on. No one was inside, but something moved. I turned back to Carl. "So what am I supposed to do?" "You've got a choice," he said. "Keep moving. Keep avoiding the roads they want you to take. Stay in motion. Stay on the fringe. And if I stop..." He didn't answer right away, just stirred his coffee slowly, then whispered, "They'll check you in, just like they did with me." My mouth went dry. "You said you used to be in transit. What changed?" Carl looked out the window. "They let me off the hook, not because I escaped, because I delivered something worse than myself." I stared. He nodded. "Solemn. They needed a replacement." I stood up. The coffee shop felt like it tilted sideways, like gravity had shifted slightly in the wrong direction. "I need to go," I muttered. Carl didn't stop me, but as I reached the door, he called out, "One more thing." I turned. He tossed me a patch, the kind you'd iron onto a uniform. It was old, frayed at the edges, black background, red thread, 3 words stitched in a circle. "You are here." No location, no coordinates, just that one sentence. A marker, a warning, or maybe a label. I climbed into my rig, locked the doors, and fired the engine. Everything came online normally, except the GPS, still blank, still a red triangle, still spinning. I reached to flip the CB to scan, just in case, when a voice crackled through the static. It wasn't a station, it wasn't weather, it was me, Jack Slyvan, eastbound, status, undelivered. I froze. The voice repeated, "Jack Slyvan, eastbound, status, undelivered, estimated arrival, unknown." I stared into the mirror, just my own face, just my own truck, but deep in the shadows behind me, I could have sworn I saw passengers. I didn't remember making the decision. 1 minute I was rolling out of Big Moose Station, Carl's patch burning a hole in my coat pocket. The next, I was pulling up Boise on my dead GPS, like it still meant something. Maybe I was chasing proof, something real. something grounded. Because if I could get back to the house, our house, maybe I could reset whatever this was. Like turning the ignition off and on when the dash lights won't behave. I needed to know Ain was still there. That I was still there. It was just after 3 a.m. when I crossed into the Idaho state line. Fog clung to the windshield like breath on glass. My headlights struggled against it, revealing only pieces of the world fence posts, roadside signs, the occasional reflection of a deer eyes blinking from the trees. I passed through towns I remembered by feel more than sight. Tiny diners I delivered 2 years ago. A church with a crooked steeple I'd slept behind once. They all looked the same, but hollow, like shells of the places I remembered. By the time I reached the north edge of Boise, I was gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The neighborhood appeared on the outskirts of town Timberidge Place, a quiet cul-de-sac wrapped in pine and privacy. I'd driven that loop 1,000 times, back when I was a husband, before the long haul replaced the dinner table. Only now, it was gone, not changed. Gone. I stared out the window as I rolled down the street, slower and slower, until I came to a full stop. There was no house at 212 Timberidge Place. Not a different paint color, not a remodel, nothing. Just a strip of dead grass and 2 rotting for sale signs. One planted in the dirt, the other snapped in half and lying sideways. No mailbox, no foundation, no evidence a home had ever been there. It was like someone had ripped it out of reality surgically, cleanly, and sewn the land back together with the blindfold on. I stepped out of the cab and walked the length of the lot. Each step felt heavier, like the soil didn't want me there, like the ground itself remembered me and resented it. I stood in the spot where the front door used to be and said her name, Aine. Nothing answered, no wind, no bugs, just silence and damp earth. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Her name was still there, Aine wife. I pressed it. It rang. Once, twice. Then her voice came through. You have reached a number that has been reassigned or is no longer in service. I froze. Not disconnected. Not mailbox full. Reassigned. I checked the address online, grasping at straws. Property records. Real estate databases. County maps. Each one returned the same message. 212 Timberidge Place does not exist. But I'd lived here. I'd fixed a sink here. Argued on the porch. Slept on the damn couch for a week straight after a fight. I turned and looked at the empty lot again. Only it wasn't empty anymore. There was someone standing in the middle of it. I didn't hear them arrive. They just appeared. A man in a brown uniform. Not a cop. Not a mailman. Just plain tan clothes and a clipboard in his hands. He was watching me and smiling. Can I help you? I asked, voice low. You're off route. Jack, he said. You weren't cleared to detour. Who are you? Doesn't matter. He walked toward me slowly. You've been in transit too long. Cargo like you starts to leak. He stopped an arm's length away. Thoughts, memories, destinations you shouldn't be capable of reaching. This place, for instance, has been off map since your original departure. I stepped back. You mean this place was removed? He nodded, scrubbed, like you should have been. He raised the clipboard and tapped a line with his pen. I squinted. It was a manifest. Again. Driver, Sleven, Jack. Status, in transit. Destination, undefined. Time in loop, 237 hours. Notes, uncooperative proximity breach. Contact imminent. What does that mean? I asked. He sighed, almost tiredly. It means you're about to remember something that'll break the loop, and we can't have that. He reached into his coat. I moved faster. My boot caught the side of his leg, and I lunged into him. The clipboard fell, scattering papers across the wet grass. He hit the ground with a grunt. I didn't stop to look back. I sprinted to the truck, fired it up, and peeled away from the cul-de-sac like my soul depended on it. The man didn't chase me. He didn't need to, because as I turned onto the main road, I saw a sign that hadn't been there before. One of those old green metal ones, rusted at the edges. Next exit, the last stop. I screamed. Not words, just noise. Pure, helpless noise. 'Cause no matter where I went, no matter what I tried to remember, no matter how many miles I put between myself and the nightmare, The same places waited for me. Tunnel Creek, Pine Lake, the diner, and now even my own home erased like a typo. I kept driving, and in the rearview mirror, the neighborhood faded, not into distance, but into static. I knew the rig wasn't going to save me, not anymore. The highways were lies, the exits, traps. Every turn felt like I was circling something I couldn't see, like a moth tracing the edges of a flame it can't understand. But what I did understand finally, fully, was this: I wasn't escaping, not by running, not by rerouting. So I made a decision. I would crash the truck, not to die, to break it, break the wheel, the loop, the frame, the cycle, maybe even the thing inside me that kept the engine running when it shouldn't have. It was near midnight, somewhere on a back road that hadn't been paved in 20 years. The trees pressed in like a crowd, and the moon was high, watching. I floored the pedal. The engine screamed in protest. The speedometer climbed 65, 70. I spotted a ravine to my left, shallow, but lined with jagged boulders, enough to do the job. I gripped the wheel tight, closed my eyes, and yanked it left. What happened next wasn't violent. It was wrong. The truck didn't crash. It didn't tip, didn't hit, didn't even bounce. It sank, like gravity reversed itself, like I'd driven into wet cement. And then, darkness, not unconsciousness, not death, just void, no sound, no wind, no weight. Then a single, metallic voice. Cargo received, processing pending. I woke up lying on cold metal. The air smelled like ozone and oil and something sweet rotting beneath it. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale, endless glow. I sat up. I was in a warehouse, huge, windowless, industrial. Long rows of trailers lined up like coffins, each backed into docking bays, but none had company logos, just black stencils that read, "In transit." Footsteps echoed nearby. I turned to see a man walking toward me. He wore a jumpsuit, gray, no insignia, but his face, it was mine, not an exact match. Older, tired, sharper in places. I was still soft, but unmistakably me. "You tried to short the system," he said. "Where the hell am I?" He smiled, a hollow thing. "Delivery Depot 6, a holding site. You weren't supposed to arrive yet. I crashed the truck." "No, Jack, you just delivered yourself." I stood up. My legs were shaky, but working. "This is a dream," I said. "I'm hallucinating. Maybe I hit my head." The man held up a small mirror. He tossed it at my feet. I looked down. The reflection wasn't me. It was the faceless figure, the thing in the mirror, in the tunnel, in the other truck. No features, no voice, just blank skin pulled over recognition. I kicked the mirror away. "Why me?" He didn't blink. "'Cause you looked." I backed away, heart hammering. Rows of other drivers stood still behind the trailers, now hundreds of them, all in uniform, all facing forward. Some had no faces. Others looked like people I remembered from the road. Earl at the gas station, Robert in the snow, the ranger, Aini, all there, all processed. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. "What are we to you?" "Cargo," he said simply. "And what happens after we're processed?" He shrugged. "Some are repurposed, some are looped, some are used to bait the next driver." I stared at him. "You're baiting the next me," he smiled. "You're catching on." Something snapped inside me. I lunged. We crashed into the nearest trailer, metal echoing like thunder. I punched him, felt bone give, but he didn't scream. He didn't bleed. He glitched, just flickered. His face shimmered, blurred, then re-solidified. Now it looked like Carl, then Robert, then me again. He shoved me back with one hand. The strength inhuman. "I've played your role. Jack, you're not special. You're just next." I staggered to my feet. "Then let me break the damn cycle." I looked around. There, against the wall, a control console. Red buttons, old monitors, a switch labeled emergency override. I ran for it. The copy lunged. I slammed my hand down on the override. The lights flickered. Sirens screamed all around us. The trailers opened, and the things inside came out. I ran. Didn't wait to see if the copy survived. Didn't care if I made it to a door or a vent or the end of the world. I just ran, and somewhere in the darkness behind me, I swear I heard the voice again. Cargo rerouted, destination undefined, status escaped. I don't remember exiting the depot. 1 second I was sprinting past flickering sirens and half-human copies clawing out of steel trailers. The next, I was on the road again. Not a road I knew, not a road anyone should know. The pavement here shimmered like oil slick, iridescent, constantly shifting under my boots. No lines, no signs, just highway stretching forever in both directions, vanishing into a sky stuck in perpetual twilight. Sunset light soft and wrong, painted everything gold and bruised purple, like the sky had been bleeding for hours and hadn't realized it was dying. I was alone, or I thought I was. The hum came first, low, mechanical, familiar, a truck engine somewhere behind me. I turned. One rig, no trailer, chrome body, lights on but dim, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was moving slowly. No driver inside, just a wheel turning on its own, the pedals dipping down without feet, and scrawled across the side in grime was a sentence. We drive ourselves now. I didn't wait to see what it wanted. I walked faster. I kept expecting to tire out, collapse, break, but my body didn't ache. My legs didn't burn. Time didn't move. My watch stayed frozen at 6. Move. The sun never dipped lower. The wind never changed. I passed gas stations where pumps hissed without customers, diners that flickered like old film reels, neon signs with broken slogans. Eat here, get forgotten. Rooms available for the lost. Open 25 hours. And the billboards. They spoke, not with sound, with text. New messages burned across them as I approached. Letters etched themselves in real time, bleeding red into the boards. Jack Sliven undelivered. Stay in your cab. Jack. We're still watching. The last one simply read, come home. I stopped and stared at it. What home? I whispered. The billboard replied, the one you left behind. I wandered for miles. Each direction looked the same, but I knew I had to keep moving. The trucks multiplied. Some parked along the side. Others drove aimlessly, back and forth, their cabs empty but running. Every now and then, one would honk long and low like it remembered me. And I remembered them, the faceless drivers, the hollow eyes, the ones I passed years ago and never thought about again. Now they passed me, silent, watching. Eventually, I found a fuel station. It was shaped like a truck stop, but warped the windows too tall, the doors too narrow. It looked like someone had built it based on a bad memory, but the lights were on, and inside, I saw my truck, the Freightliner, parked neatly beneath a flickering canopy, clean, undamaged, like it had never crashed, like it had waited for me. I stepped inside. The key was in the ignition. The dashboard lit up. Welcome back. Driver's leaving. I sat in the seat. My hands gripped the wheel on instinct. The engine rumbled, warm and steady. The mirrors showed only shadow, and the GPS now displayed one line of text, resume route. I didn't press anything, but the engine revved on its own, and the truck began to roll. The road ahead opened like a mouth, long, narrow, lined with telephone poles that buzzed without wires. I passed through a checkpoint, no gate, just two monoliths on either side of the road carved with unfamiliar symbols. As I crossed between them, a message blipped on the dash, re-entering the loop. I slammed the brakes. Nothing happened. The pedal moved, but the truck didn't stop. I wasn't driving anymore. I grabbed the door handle, locked. The windows sealed. The CB crackled, even though it hadn't worked in days. Then a voice mine, layered and distorted. Welcome back. Jack. Cargo status. Compliant. Estimated delivery. Approaching. I shouted. Kicked the console. Slammed the dash. Nothing. The windshield ahead flickered, and in the reflection I saw my passenger seat. Someone was sitting there now. A child. Blonde. Pale. Blank-eyed. The girl from the desert gas station. She turned her head toward me slowly. You're almost done, she said. Done with what? I demanded. She smiled, but her lips never moved. Her voice echoed inside my skull. Being human, The truck rolled on. No more signs, no more exits. Just the road and the delivery I didn't remember signing up for. And in the distance, a building was forming. Huge, towering, pale gray. The processing center. And painted across its face, in letters larger than life, "You have arrived." I don't remember the truck stopping. One moment we were rolling through endless twilight. The girl beside me whispering things without sound. The next silence. No engine noise. No vibration. Just stillness. I opened my eyes. We were parked at the base of the processing center. It was even bigger up close, a monolith made of pale concrete and glass. But the glass didn't reflect anything. Not the truck. Not the sky. Not me. Above the entrance, a massive steel sign blinked once, then locked into a message. Jack Sleven, final delivery confirmed. I reached for the door handle. This time, it opened. The air outside was colder than it should have been. Not icy hollow, like there was no oxygen in it, like the molecules had given up trying to carry sound. The girl remained in the passenger seat, still watching, still smiling that impossible, childlike smile. I closed the door behind me and approached the building. There were no guards, no cameras, no one waiting. Just a single sliding door that opened before I could touch it. Inside, fluorescent white halls stretching in every direction. Too clean, too silent. And at the far end of the corridor, a desk. He was waiting for me, middle-aged, clean-cut, wearing a crisp black suit with a red tie. A clipboard sat in front of him. Though he never looked at it, his eyes never left mine. "Jack Slavin," he said, his voice echoing down the sterile hall. "Welcome. You've come a long way. You people love saying that," I muttered. "We do, 'cause it's always true. What is this place?" He gestured at the floor, the walls, the air. "This is where roots end. And what happens to me now?" He smiled softly. "That depends. You have a choice." He stood up and came around the desk. 2 doors slid open in the walls beside us. Behind the first, a massive control room filled with screens. I saw highways, parking lots, cab cameras, rest stops. Every screen showed someone like me still driving, still circling, still trying to escape. "They're still in transit," the man said. "Why?" "Because they refused the offer." He pointed to the second door. Behind it, nothing, just blackness. Like space without stars, a void you could fall into forever and never hit bottom. "And that?" I asked. He looked at it, then at me. "That's forgetting. No loop, no rebirth, no awareness, just nothing." I stared at both. "And what's the offer?" He stepped back and placed the clipboard in my hands. It was blank, until it wasn't. Words began forming across the page like ink bleeding through from beneath. Acknowledge status. In transit. Accept role. Watcher. Abandon identity. Jack Slevan. Why in? I looked up. "You want me to become like you." "Not like me," he said. "Like them." He turned, and for the first time, I saw his face shift. Not violently, not grotesquely, just a fade, until it wasn't a face at all. Just skin, just surface, blank, smooth, mirror-like. "You've already worn it, Jack." In reflections, in mirrors, in the other truck. I dropped the clipboard like it burned me. "I'm not one of you. You are now. I didn't choose this. You did when you stopped, when you looked, when you chased the truth instead of staying in your lane." He stepped forward. "You have one more route left, Jack. One more hall." "No." He tilted his head. "Then you know what's behind the second door." I looked at the void again. It pulled at something deep inside me. A hunger I couldn't name. A freedom I couldn't trust. "I won't become one of you." He nodded slowly. "You already have." The lights above us flickered. The air grew heavier, and from behind both doors came the sound of horns. Low, distant, calling. The man picked up the clipboard from the floor and placed it back on the desk. "If you walk through that door," he said, gesturing to the void, "you'll lose everything. Even the memory of who you were, and the other, you'll forget your pain, your fear, but not the loop." I stepped forward, heart pounding, legs trembling, and I did something none of them expected. I turned away, not toward the control room, not toward the void, not toward either fate. I ran back into the hallway. Alarms blared. Lights screamed red. Unscheduled movement. Cargo rejected. Escape attempt in progress. The hallway shifted around me. Doors multiplied. Walls changed positions. But I didn't stop. Not this time. I barreled through everything. The clean tiles. The quiet corridors. The corridors that screamed. And somewhere in that maze of endings, I found a door that wasn't locked. And I threw myself through it. Wind, night air, gravel under my boots. I was outside again, on a highway that didn't shine, that didn't speak, that didn't know me. The sun was finally rising. First light broke the horizon in pale orange streaks, and for the first time in days, maybe weeks, maybe longer, I heard birds. My truck was gone, but my name Jack Sleevan was still mine. I started walking west. No destination, no GPS, just a direction. And in my pocket, Carl's old patch still read, "You are here." And for the first time, that was enough. I walked west for days, maybe longer. There were no road signs anymore, no mile markers, no static on the breeze, just long stretches of asphalt, real asphalt, beneath my boots, dust in the air, birds in the trees. The world felt solid again. I started to believe I was out, that the loop, the depot, the faceless things that I'd outrun them all. But deep down, I knew better. Something like that doesn't let go so easily, not without taking something back. It was dusk when I saw the hitchhiker. A man in a worn brown coat stood by the roadside, thumb out, tall, thin, no bag, no sign of a car, just him and the highway. I slowed my pace as I neared. Something about the way he stood too still set off alarms in my chest, but there was nowhere to turn, and I didn't want to show fear. Not again. When I was 20 feet away, he smiled. Been a while. Jack. I stopped dead. My throat dried. Do I know you? He tilted his head. That depends. Do you know yourself? His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it, a tone that scratched at something beneath the skin. I took a step back. Don't bother running, he said. This road only moves forward when you face what's behind you. I looked past him. Down the road, the sun was dipping into the horizon. The trees around us were still too still. Who are you? I asked. He shrugged. Call me a collector, a courier. I've driven farther than most, and I've seen how your story ends unless what? He held out his hand. In his palm, a key, silver, old, scratched with wear, and on its fob, a logo I hadn't seen in years. Freightliner. No, I said immediately. I'm not going back. You're not, he said. This is forward. He nodded toward the field beside the road. There, half hidden in shadow, was a new truck. Long-nosed sleeper, matte black paint. No markings, just parked quietly like it had been waiting all along. My legs shook. Why? I whispered. Why me? Because you didn't become them, he said. You ran. You remembered. You refused the manifest. I looked at the truck. It was beautiful. Familiar. A home I never asked for, but always returned to. And where does it go? I asked. His smile widened. Not kind. Not cruel. Just true. Where you choose. I stepped toward him slowly. What's the catch? He lowered the key slightly. You'll still see them. The shadows. The things in the mirrors. The roads that don't end. They don't forget. So I'll always be watching. No, he said. You'll be watched. But now, you get to decide what you see. He held the key out again. My hand hovered over it. And in that second, I remembered everything. The girl in the desert. Robert in the snow. Pine Lake. Tunnel Creek. The depot. The man with my face. And I realized something. They never wanted to destroy me. They wanted me to become them. To comply. And I hadn't. I took the key. The world seemed to exhale. The trees rustled. The sky deepened. The road finally felt real beneath my boots. The hitchhiker nodded once, satisfied. You're not cargo anymore. Jack, I looked back at him. Then what am I? He turned away. You're the driver. I climbed into the cab. The seat hugged my body like it was made for me. The dash lit up, but there was no GPS, no map, just a compass dial and a small sticker on the dash. Choose wisely. Stay human. I turned the key, the engine rumbled to life. The radio flickered, then settled on a station I didn't recognize, but it was real music, real voices. No static, no whispers, just freedom. As I pulled onto the highway, the sun dipped below the trees, and the sky went indigo. The first stars blinked awake, and in the mirror, for just a second, I saw all of them, not chasing me, not watching, just fading, like fog in the rear view. I drive now, not for a company, not for a deadline, just for the road, for the breath in my lungs and the wheel in my hands. And when I see other drivers tired, lost, unsure, I flash my brights. Not a warning, a message. You're not alone. Sometimes, when the night gets real quiet, I hear them again. The girl, the tunnel, the loop. But they don't scare me, because I have the wheel now. And I know the most important rule of all. Keep driving. Don't stop. And remember who you are.